I'm Sue Genest, an EMDRIA approved training provider of basic and advanced trainings. Talk for a couple minutes here about telehealth. First off, I've been doing EMDR online for about 15 years now, a long time before many were. And the greatest advantage was the accessibility for my clients, especially those with complex trauma. If they lived uh, 3 hours away from me or in the prairies where we would have winter days where it was unsafe to drive. And some of my clients with complex trauma, when ego states were up and it was unsafe to drive, again, it provided accessibility where in the small villages that they may be in, they didn't have an EMDR therapist. They may not have had any therapist or a therapist who understood trauma and dissociation. So that accessibility was the greatest positive about being able to do EMDR online. And I found very early that it was easy to do the bilateral stimulation. As long as the client had a computer that was big enough to do the bilateral across the screen. If they didn't, then we would do tapping. And for clients that I was working with over a longer period of time, I would lend them my TheraTappers and then they could turn those on. One of the other advantages I found with my clients, especially those with complex trauma, that the work we were doing was quite intense, is that they didn't have to drive after the session. They could just go to their bedroom and have a sleep. Now, some of the cons then of working at home, especially for clients, is if there are family members. So that screening for domestic violence. So when clients are working at home, to be sure that somebody is not in the house that is listening, or you have pets or children coming in, interrupting regularly. So those could be some of the negatives. One of the negatives I came across very early, 15 years ago, was the technology wasn't as good as what increased during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we had all kinds of advancements in technology and in counseling platforms that allowed a lot more security of information and of talking with our clients. Back then, of course, we dealt a lot more with disconnections. So I made sure my clients had the phone next to them. They knew what would happen if we disconnected online. Then I would call them immediately and we could until we could talk on the phone until we got reconnected again. That was really, really important. The other thing's important is your client can be moving around when we're online. So at one point they could be in their home. The next week you talk to them and they're at an aunt's. So there's always that making sure where is the client when you're talking to them online, who's there to support them if it's a really difficult session, if you need first responders, making sure you know what city they're in and who's available for them online. Another thing that many therapists don't think about, and I remind them in my EMDR training, is the environment that needs to be created. Because we have, sort of from the chest up, that environment is really important. What's the lighting? Making sure that the client learns about the technology so you can both pin each other and get more nonverbals. Making sure you have a mic so that the client can hear you clearly. It might sound clear to you, but to the client, they're struggling. So making sure that environment that you have a limited view and space is good. What's in the background? You can blur it like I have right now or have a nice scene, but making sure that you don't have personal stuff you don't want clients to see and that it doesn't just look like a big mess in the background. You can take a picture of your office and put that as the background so there's something familiar to the client. So those are really important pieces to working online. Another thing that's really important are the rituals for transition. So when you're closing a session, making sure you have more time. If they have to work in a bedroom, How do we help them transition so they're ready to see their kids and family when they leave that room? And when they come back at night, you know, that they're not thinking about the assault or the difficult things that they processed earlier that day when they go to bed. So maybe covering up the computer or doing a smudge or burning candles or what have you, some kind of ritual to close that session and to not be thinking about that when they come back at night. So those can be some things that need to be taken care of. I would also suggest that there's a pre-screening for domestic violence. Um, as I said, check where your clients are. What is their technology? Maybe do a pre-session for technology so the client understands how to use it, um, how to pin, explaining what you'll be doing with their information, and if you're videotaping any of the sessions where that information will be kept. And therapists learning about the technology so they know about firewalls, they know about security online, and they make sure that the information that they keep online is secure. So it's the clients know that that information is not going to be taken by anybody. Yeah, so those are the main things I would say. There's lots of things I can talk about working online, but those are really important ones. Another one I'll just mention is always, always being on time. When a client is coming to your office, they're sitting in your office, they might hear a little bit behind the wall. They know you're there. So if you're late, which clients never like, but they at least know you're there. Where online, clients can get really upset if they're waiting even 30 seconds seems like 5 minutes to them. So that being on time is absolutely critical when you're working online. So I hope you take that information to heart, and we can talk more about this at another time. But thank you for your time and attention.